I remember my first intense period pains being when I was 19. I'd done a kickboxing class. I came home and suddenly period pains hit. I couldn't move. I was crippled. I remember I had a metal bed frame and I remember biting on the metal bars just because I didn't know what else to do, like a caged animal. And I think from that point, in early 20s, it flared up again. So it used to be fine for a few months, then bad. So it wasn't consistent at that point. And it was probably early 20s that it started happening every single month. And I was like, this is ridiculous. So I used to go to a doctor's every single month, and all they would do is give me painkillers.
Essentially what it is that tissue that's very similar to the tissue inside your womb grows outside of the uterus or the womb. So it grows in other places. It might grow on the outside of the uterus, it might grow on the ovaries, the fallopian tubes, but it can also grow on other organs such as your bladder, your bowel, the liver, the diaphragm, all sorts of different places. And then when your hormone levels change, basically what happens is it bleeds, much like your uterus bleeds when you have your period, and that blood can't escape, and that causes a lot of pain. And what also happens is that you get scar tissue where those lesions are, and that scarring leads to organs being stuck together.
You know, you have your break during the pill. The pain was so horrific. I was kind of like, sod this, I'm just going to keep taking the pill consistently. I'm not going to have a period. And that's what I done. And I just figured out how to manage the pain myself. No doctor told me to do that. I just done it. And that worked up to a certain extent until I was getting ovary pain, fallopian tube pain. I'd be crippled over. I could be walking, I mean, this happens now. I could be walking around Tesco's, hit with pain, and I'll be on the floor. And it got worse and worse. I remember laying under my desk at work. And I remember thinking, I look really bloated. I'm sure I haven't put on this much weight. But my stomach was getting bigger and bigger. And then I pushed and pushed the GP. She put me on to a different gynecologist at Adam Brooks in Cambridge. He'd done an MRI, and endometriosis was just spread everywhere.
In theory, it's not necessarily difficult to diagnose, in that if you have a laparoscopy where they do like a keyhole surgery to put a camera inside the body, they can see it, but that's surgery, and that's a pretty major way of finding out if someone has a condition. So in terms of finding out before that process has to happen, it's pretty hard. So there's a long list of symptoms, but not everyone has the same symptoms. And with any condition of pain, it isn't necessarily the case that because you have a lot of pain, there's a lot going on, or that because you don't have much pain, there isn't a lot going on inside. You can't see it on a normal ultrasound. There are specialists who can see endometrial lesions and scar tissue on an ultrasound, but they are few and far between. And I mean, like, hardly any. You can see it sometimes on an MRI scan. Again, it has to be a very highly specialized specialist looking at that MRI scan, and even then they're not necessarily going to see everything. So really, the only sure way of fully knowing what's going on is to put someone under general anesthetic and to do a laparoscopy. And it's also an issue that a lot of women don't get listened to before even getting anywhere close to any sort of support. So on average, it takes 7.5 years to get a diagnosis, and that's the average.